Yesterday, you saw the Helen Suzman Foundation explaining their proposals to try and improve the running of the Judicial Service Commission. They recommended that there be fewer politicians or members of parliament on the panel. They also said there should be more transparency. Now, today, the organisation Freedom Under Law releases its own report about what it says it believes should happen to improve the Service Delivery Commission. To improve the Judicial Service Commission. Calli Solik is the lead researcher for the report for Freedom Under Law. Calli, good afternoon to you. What do you believe are the problems with the Judicial Service Commission at the moment?
So I think they are varied, and I think there are a few introductions and proposals that overlap with the Helen Suzman Foundations. I think the first is infrastructurally they seem to be lacking support, sufficient internal support. So we've suggested that the internal secretariat be kind of improved, greater resourced, which would go a long way to addressing some of the other complaints. For example, that there's a total lack of information available that they've made public, and that complaints are taking extraordinarily long to resolve.
Do you agree with the Helen Suzman Foundation there should be fewer politicians on the panel?
That is one of the recommendations that we've made. I think it would be remiss of us to think that all the political interference has come necessarily from MPs. I think that's not necessarily the case. But I do think that we are at a point where political party appointees are overrepresented on the JSC. So we've suggested reducing the members of the National Assembly from 6 to 4, the National Council provinces from 4 to 2, and the presidential nominees from 4 to 2, just to address what we think is a bit of an imbalance.
It would mean, it would probably mean a lot less space for opposition parties if that were to happen.
Yeah, so coupled with that, we suggest making provision for half of those to be from opposition parties.
Yeah. In a way, this thing is always a balance, right? It's a hybrid system. It's a balance between what politicians want. We should be careful of that. Yeah. It's also between what the sort of people inside the system, I'm talking about, judges, lawyers, academics want. We should be careful of that too, because they have their own interests. Systems always involve people perpetuating themselves. So if you want a judicial system like it is now, 100 years from now, just make sure it's judges that select the new judges, right, would go the argument. So where should the balance lie? Because you would be removing the voice of voters by, you would be reducing the voice of voters by reducing the number of politicians. Why is that a good thing?
So we've suggested that we increase the number of senior judges on the JSC, coupled with a reduction in the number of political parties. And I don't think that would necessarily shift the balance out of whack. At the moment, only 8 of the people who sit on the JSC actually have to have experience in the administration of justice, and actually have to have legal training. Only 7 of those experience in the administration of justice, which I think is interesting that those who are appointing judicial candidates are so far removed from that knowledge and those processes. So our idea is to kind of shift things to regain a balance. It
seems obvious to me that it's going to be quite hard to make any changes to the Judicial Service Commission because you have to convince Parliament to do it. I've yet to see a politician accept a reduced role for themselves. How would you do that? So what we've done in looking holistically at the JSC's role in appointments and discipline is we've set out a series of proposals in the report. And adjusting the membership is but one, which we understand requires constitutional amendment, which is notoriously difficult to effect, let alone members of Parliament accepting a reduced role for them. So we understand that's kind of a long game approach. But there are certain things that we can introduce in the interim that would help the system develop more seamlessly. What would those be? So, for example, the introduction of better guidelines, which the JSC has recently taken some steps in introducing and calling for public comment, which we think that they should be applauded for, and it's a good step in the right direction. Then other things, for example, making the JSC provide reasons for the shortlists, which they don't do otherwise than in respect of the Constitutional Court shortlists. Then kind of introducing measures to greater standardize the interview process so that you don't get someone having a 3-minute interview and someone having a 2.5-hour interview. And standardizing maybe the areas of questioning in which they ask questions so that everyone kind of has a fair bite at the cherry. Calli Solik, thank you, lead researcher for the report for the organisation Freedom Under Law.